Congratulations, you who are here on a gray day. I'm Marya Dantzer, today's worship associate, and our opening words are by William Henry Channing. The poem is called My Symphony. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars, birds, babes, and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. The opening hymn is number 126 in the gray or cloth-covered hymnal, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Please rise in body or spirit.
So welcome to First Parish in Bedford, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where we come together every week as a people with diverse beliefs and a shared commitment to bring more peace, love, and justice into the world. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whether you worship one God, many gods, or no God, you are welcome here. I want to say a special welcome to our visitors this morning, in person and on Zoom. We're so glad you're with us on this beautiful Massachusetts morning. Here in the sanctuary, you are invited to fill out a blue connection card, which you will find at the end of your pews. You can give that to one of the ushers during the collection time, and we will add you to our mailing list so you don't miss out on anything. In Zoom, we will put a link in the chat to a form you can fill out as your virtual connection card. Parents and caregivers of little ones, there is a nursery available downstairs for your convenience, but we are always delighted to have little ones here in the sanctuary with us as well. Everyone is invited to join us after the service in our common room for coffee, tea, and fellowship. We also have a quiet space upstairs in room 201 as another place for conversation and connection. There's coffee service and snacks in that room as well. Now, some announcements this morning. I want to thank everyone who came out to support our very successful Irish Fest last night. We had a great turnout, 90 people. The food and music was amazing, so thank you to everyone who made it happen. The musicians, including our own Natan, yes. The people who provided the food and desserts, the people who set up and cleaned up, and finally to our music director, Brad Connor. And I want to say special thanks to the music committee for making it all happen. It was a blast. The annual service auction is coming up soon, April 6th at 6 p.m., and we need more donations for the auction. This is the last weekend to donate, so you can use the QR code in your order of service. You can go online to our website and offer up your treasures for us all to bid on. And you'll hear more this week about that event. Today, after the service, we're having a listening circle with people who have recently-ish volunteered or participated in our religious education, faith development programming. We want to get your thoughts on the future direction of the program as we look to hire someone for the upcoming year. So this is in the Bacon Room at 11:30. Bagels will be provided. And let's see, this coming Sunday afternoon, that is next Sunday afternoon, the gaming group meets from 2 to 5. All are welcome. This is a super fun all-ages event. It's not a drop-off event, so children and youth, please come, but families should plan to supervise their own. Bring a game, play a familiar game, join the fun. And now we have two special announcements today. First, I want to invite up Bea and Dorothy to tell you a little bit about the Plant Fair, which is actually our Committee of the Month.
Yes. So you're gonna, I'll start? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm the Dorothy who doesn't dance, okay? Now, when was the first parish plant fair? We don't know, because there have been gaps. But it was more than 70 years ago when two First Parish gardeners held a modest garden event in a driveway. Since then, it has evolved into a cherished spring event for First Parish and for Bedford. Every year this has happened because First Parish members work together, and 2024 is no different. This year will be the 68th, we think, Plant and Craft Fair, if we make it happen. Just because it's happened 60 sometimes before doesn't guarantee that it will happen now. Many of the vital tasks can be done according to your own schedule. We need plant donators and people to dig for donors who have physical limitations. We need people who can foster donated plants until the fair. We need your extra seedlings, your unwanted but still attractive planters and lawn decorations. We need baked goods. We will need volunteers to set up for the event, contribute children's games and lead activities during the event, and clean up after it. Let us know what you can do to make this event a success at the table in the common room after today's service.
Thanks, Dorothy. Yep, and so we had a couple questions for our minute that we had to answer, and one thing is, what do you like about being on this committee? Well, I really love being able to take this church out of the building onto the common and create, a community event that everybody in Bedford is expecting, right? And it's just a wonderful outreach. It's just great. And so, of course, we're living our mission of environmental justice. Oh, there goes my whatever. Environmental justice and, all kinds of things, right? It's really great. And, what have I learned by being on this committee? Well, I've learned, how to meet people where they are, right? Just because I want to do something one way doesn't mean that's the best way. And it's such inspiration on this committee, really great, like these T-shirts and the mugs. Mariah's picking up that torch from Liz Hannigan, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be great. I wanted to say a special shout out and a thank you to all the people who have already volunteered. And as Dorothy had mentioned, now is the time to start collecting people. We really need somebody to help coordinate the day of volunteers. That would be really great. Somebody who could do Sign Up Genius or something like that. Today we'll definitely be recruiting also, obviously, the people for the plants, the heritage plants, because that's what makes our event so special. Come join us, plant some seedlings, and have some fun with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Bea and Dorothy. And now, last but certainly not least, I would like to invite up Irene to share a special message about the annual pledge drive, which starts today.
Well, he just took the first sentence of my pitch. Our pledge drive starts today. And this is for the next year, 2024, 2025. And our theme this year is Keep Our Momentum Going. We've had a very exciting and successful year this year, and we would like to keep our congregation healthy and strong. We've made the commitment to support our staff, our programming, including faith development for children, and to fund critical maintenance that we have on our historic building. And so before you leave today, you may pick up a packet, or if you've already picked it up, that's fine, or we will mail it to you tomorrow. And please read it over, give it some thought, and the deadline for pledges will be April 21st. And it will help us develop the details for our budget for next year. We ask you to please donate as generously as you are able, and keep our church strong and vibrant, and to keep our momentum going, which is another phrase that our minister created. Mainly because, as we said, we've had a really good year this year. We just want to kind of keep moving forward. We're hoping for, last year we had 94% participation of the congregation, which is fantastic. And so we're always shooting for 100%. And we just thank you in advance for your generosity.
Thank you, Irene. So you can pick up your pledge envelope at a table in the common room after the service if you have not already. So those are all of our announcements. Now, if you will please rise again, we will share our unison affirmation, which is in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en espíritu de amor, y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. Please be seated. It is time now for our story for all ages. So for those of you on Zoom, this is a great time for the family to gather closer around the inviting blue glow of your monitor, tablet, iPhone, or other device. Our story today is in honor of the holy month of Ramadan. Our story in honor of the holy month of Ramadan, which is happening right now. Our story today is from the religious tradition of Islam. This is a very famous story about giving, which is a very important practice in Islam. Sharing what you have with others who are in need is so important. In fact, it is called one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And this story is adapted from the UUA Tapestry of Faiths. So once upon a time, there was a man named Uthman bin Affan who lived in a place called Medina, which is in modern-day Saudi Arabia. And this is a very dry part of the world when there isn't a lot of rainfall to begin with. And one year, in the year 640 AD to be precise, the rains did not come at all. Without any rain, the food crops withered. There were no figs on the fig trees, no olives on the olive branches. The people of Medina and all of their animals were running out of food. And without food, the people knew that they would starve. So you can imagine how happy the people were the day they learned that a caravan of 1,000 camels was approaching Medina, and each camel was laden down with food for sale. And as the caravan approached, the people began to imagine the smells that would soon fill their kitchen as they were cooking their favorite meals. They imagined the tastes of their favorite foods, but best of all, they imagined going to bed with full bellies for the first time in weeks. And they were especially happy knowing that this caravan belonged to Uthman bin Affan because he had a reputation for generosity, and so they trusted that he would give them a good and fair price on the food that he had for sale. Well, meanwhile, a few greedy shopkeepers went ahead outside of the city to meet Uthman and his caravan outside of town. And they wanted to buy from him all of the food from his caravan so that they could resell it in their own shops. And they knew that with the people starving, they could command 2 times the usual price, 3 times the usual price. They were ready to pay almost any price that Uthman bin Affan would ask of them. But to their surprise, when they made this offer, Uthman said, "Gentlemen, I'm afraid I cannot do business with you, for I have already received a better offer." So the shopkeepers were like, okay, right, playing hardball, okay. And they did a little bit of conferring together, and they came back to Uthman bin Affan, and they said, all right, fine, you've got us. We're going to up our offer 30%. And Uthman said, "Gentlemen, I can't do business with you. I have already received a better offer." So they went back, and they conferred again, and they came back. "We will pay you double what you have asked, what we have offered." Again, he declined. So the merchants went back, and they huddled up again, and they came back, and they said, "Look, we will pay you 5 times what these goods are worth," because they knew that they could charge the starving people even more than that. And Uthman again said, "Gentlemen, I have received a better offer already." And the merchants exploded. Who? Where have you received this better offer? And Uthman said, "I have received a better offer from Islam, which teaches me that anyone who gives will get back in happiness 1,000 times more than they ever gave away." So it was that Uthman bin Affan refused all of the money the merchants offered. Instead, he brought his caravan to town, and he gave away all of the food carried by his 1,000 camels for free to the starving people of Medina. And today, more than 1,000 years later, much more, people still talk about the generosity of Uthman bin Affan, and Muslims all over the world practice giving as one of the 5 pillars of their faith. That is our story for today. Thank you for sharing it. We're going to sing the children out now to their classes. Pre-K through 5 should go to the Overlook Room. Crossing Paths Youth should go to 204. The song is Jason Shelton's Children's Blessing, and the words are in your order of service. Our joys and sorrows extend beyond this community to the larger community, to our world, a world that is filled with kindness and an abundance of small and enduring miracles, a world that is also racked by war and ongoing terrible violence. So much so that we can become numb and desensitized to it, lest our hearts should break. And in such a world, to keep alive in our hearts the dream of peace is an act of hope and resistance. This is an adaptation from the poem Pray for Peace by Ellen Bass. Pray to whomever you kneel down to. Jesus nailed to his wooden or plastic cross, his suffering face bent to kiss you. Buddha still under the bow tree in scorching heat. Adonai, Allah, raise your arms to Mary that she may lay her palm on our brows, to Shekinah, queen of heaven and earth, to Inanna in her stripped descent. Then pray to the bus driver who takes you to work. On the bus, pray for everyone riding that bus, for everyone riding buses all over the world. Drop some silver and pray. Waiting in line for the movies, for the ATM, for your latte and croissant, offer your plea. Make your eating and drinking a supplication. Make your slicing of carrots a holy act, each translucent layer of the onion a deeper prayer. To hawk or wolf or the great whale, pray. Bow down to terriers and shepherds and Siamese cats, fields of artichokes and elegant strawberries. Make the brushing of your hair a prayer, every strand its own voice, singing in the choir on your head. As you wash your face, the water slipping through your fingers, a prayer. Water, softest thing on earth, gentleness that wears away rock. If you're hungry, pray. If you're tired, pray to Gandhi and Dorothy Day, Shakespeare, Sappho, Sojourner Truth. When you walk to your car, to the mailbox, to the video store, let each step be a prayer that we all keep our legs. And if you're riding on a bicycle or a skateboard in a wheelchair, each revolution of the wheels a prayer as the earth revolves. Less harm, less harm, less harm. With each breath, take in the faith of those who have believed when belief seemed foolish, who persevered. With each breath out, cherish. Pull weeds for peace, turn over in your sleep for peace. Feed the birds, each shiny seed that spills onto the earth another second of peace. Wash the dishes, call your mother, drink wine. Shovel leaves or snow or trash from your sidewalk, make a path. Fold a photo of a dead child around your Visa card. Scoop your holy water from the gutter, gnaw your crust, mumble along like a crazy person, stumbling your prayer through the streets. Let's take a breath together. And one more breath. May each of us be an agent of peace in whatever way is available to us. May we carry the dream of peace in our hearts and in our hands, and may we be ready when some moment of possibility arrives that our prayers for peace become action, become alive in the world because we did some small thing it was given to us to do. Blessed be and amen.
We can't all give the bounty of 1,000 camels, but we can all feel the uplift in our hearts when we give. Today's offering will gratefully be received now. You can donate through our website also by scanning the donate QR code on the last page of your order of service, or text the word give and the dollar amount to the number you'll find in the order of service.
Your generosity today builds on the generosity of the past. We are grateful for the spirit of giving that has made First Parish what it is. And in honor of that tradition, well, we have a special hymn to share today. It is written by our very own Dean Groves. And the words and tune are on the back of your order of service. It is "As We Enjoy These Shady Trees."
As
Life is funny. When I was a kid, back in the days before the internet or social media or any kind of wired anything, we got our kid lore the old-fashioned way by word of mouth on the playground, and thus was transmitted to me all of the important things you really need to know, like if you eat Pop Rocks and drink a Coke, your stomach can explode. The goopy stuff inside a Stretch Armstrong is poisonous. The blood inside your body is actually blue and not red. How to survive in quicksand. And one of the bits of kid lore that I learned was that Antidisestablishmentarianism is the longest word in the English language. This was something generally acknowledged to be true. It was cool to know such a long word, to be able to say it, even better to be able to spell it. That was some bragging rights, even though it's not an especially hard word to sound out, just a long one. The longest word, in fact, in the English language, as I would have told you had you asked me when I was 8. And I'm sure this sounds incredibly silly if this was not part of your childhood, but it was a part of mine, and as it happens, I have carried this word anti-disestablishmentarianism around with me in my head all of my life. All of my life. We vaguely knew what it meant, right? The establishment part meant there being an established church, like the Church of England, a state church, right? No separation of church and state. Boo hiss, how un-American. So the disestablishment part meant wanting to not have an official state church, which is groovy and liberal and American. And so anti-disestablishmentarianism meant the point of view that was against disestablishing the state church. And we're right back to boo hiss. But otherwise, not a word that, honestly, I thought had much of anything to do with my life or ever could have much of anything to do with my life. It was just like a cool, quirky word to know that gave 8-year-old me a satisfying glow of precocity. Imagine my disappointment in learning as I prepared for this sermon that according to some of the so-called experts working at Big Dictionary, it is not the longest word in the English language because it is not actually a word at all. You won't find anti-disestablishmentarianism in the Webster's Dictionary, the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary. You won't find it in many dictionaries because according to these self-appointed word autocrats, no one has ever meaningfully said it or used it. It's a made-up word. It's a fake. How rude. And then, imagine my greater surprise and delight in learning that this made-up non-word that I've carried around in my head as a useless bit of trivia for 40-plus years actually does have a connection to my life, a really big connection to my life. So you see, I've recently been reading a book by your former minister, the Reverend Jack Mendelson. The book is called Channing the Reluctant Radical. It's a biography of William Ellery Channing, the founder of modern Unitarianism. And for anyone who doesn't know, William Ellery Channing was a minister. He lived from 1780 to 1842 in Boston. He was a Unitarian minister before there was any kind of organized Unitarian movement. And in 1819, he preached in Baltimore a famous sermon about Unitarianism that more than anything else established and defined this religious movement as a thing. The sermon was at least 90 minutes long. You're welcome. And it was a huge success. The printed version of that sermon was a runaway bestseller. It was the biggest seller of any printed thing by far to that point in the United States. And he's not particularly well known today, but in his lifetime, William Ellery Channing was one of the most influential, most widely read American intellectuals on the American scene. And he used that considerable influence to argue against war, the Mexican-American War, for example, to argue against slavery, to argue against censorship and bigotry and religious intolerance, to argue against greed and exploitation. He argued for religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right of conscience. He pretty much invented Sunday school, and he argued that religious education was about teaching children to think for themselves and to find their own truth. This was like in 1820. Teach children to think for themselves. He helped invent urban ministry, and he was actively engaged in working on behalf of the poor, the overlooked, and the forgotten in Boston's burgeoning capitalist empire. He was on the leading edge of just about any progressive movement you cared to name. And in 1820, he was also firmly in favor of forcing people to support their local Christian church. Because in Massachusetts in 1820, there was no separation of church and state, right? Towns established churches. This church right here was established by the town of Bedford in 1729, and they came into existence at the same time. Members of the town were taxed to pay for the church and pay for the minister, like it or not, support it or not. The church was a state-sponsored institution. And decisions about the church were voted on not by the church members, but by the town members in town meetings, those town meetings. This was called the Standing Order. So a delightful book I refer back to often is called A Meeting House and Its People, The Story of First Parish in Bedford, written by one Sharon McDonald. Maybe you've met her. And Sharon is going to point out later that William Ellery Channing did not preach about the Mexican-American War because that was much later. But he did preach about war in general. So before you come at me with your phones, I misspoke. All right, but page 42 in this book points out that every decision about First Parish in Bedford was voted on by taxpayers, right down to how often the floor got swept. Everything. And the idea behind this, and the reason that William Ellery Channing supported this standing order, is because there was a belief that religion was fundamental to an orderly and a moral society. And an orderly and moral society is what made democratic governance possible. And so, of course, the state should establish and support the church. Channing was all for it. And that year, 1820, there was a big debate, actually, about the Massachusetts Constitution. And some radicals were proposing that it should be changed so that supporting churches would become voluntary. And Channing published a sermon arguing against any such thing, which means he was more or less an anti-disestablishmentarian. And he was preaching anti-disestablishmentarianism. And doubtless, voluntary religion as an institution, voluntary religion, just felt too precarious to him. Could the very existence of the church on the town common be left to something so mercurial as the popular will? To something so crass as people voting with their dollars? To choice? Could it be left to choice? And, of course, eventually, Channing lost. And anti-disestablishmentarianism lost because by the 1830s, the standing order in Massachusetts ended, and churches stopped becoming taxpayer-funded institutions. And by this point, Channing had come around to this idea. He is, in fact, a little embarrassed by his earlier opposition. Jack Mendelson notes that in all of his later collections of sermons, all of this stuff was edited out. Historian Daniel Walker Howe, in his book, What Hath God Wrought?, notes that paradoxically, the end of state-sponsored religion in America led to an explosion of self-supporting voluntary societies. These included churches, but also benevolent societies, professional organizations, political organizations, educational societies, charities, social clubs, advocacy groups, museums, libraries, universities, on and on. Americans displayed a high level of zeal for creating and supporting these institutions that they believed in, for their own betterment and for the betterment of the common good. And that is not to say that it was always easy for churches. In the early days after disestablishment, Church funding was a creative and sometimes a precarious endeavor, including here at First Parish. Of course, right away they went after donations from likely supporters, but there was nothing so ambitious and democratic as a general canvass of the members. Pews were rented out. That was a really common way of funding churches in the 19th century. Of course, there were endowments created by wealthy donors with varying kinds of strings attached. Sharon McDonald, in her book, records that in 1854, a Tea Party fundraiser saved the day here at Bedford, so shout out to the fundraisers. This church has had its ups and downs. Financial scarcity is a common theme in these years as the fortunes of the town of Bedford rose and fell as industries and economic cycles came and went. In 1920, at the beginning of a new ministry, First Parish officially changed its bylaws to say that no longer would pew rentals be the main source of its funds. From 1920 on, the budget would be met with an annual canvass of all of its members. So welcome, my friends, to the 104th anniversary of the First Parish Pledge Drive. But the annual pledge drive is more than just a funding mechanism, although it is that. In fact, the primary source of funding by which this church exists is your pledges. The church draws funding from steeple leases, from the endowment, from many fun and creative fundraising events that happen, like the Irish Fest, like the service auction. But the pledge drive is the principal source of funding, and the pledge drive, more than any of these other things, democratizes the support of First Parish. It invites every person to give. Not that all should give the same amount, not that anyone should give any particular amount. There is no required pledge at First Parish. Pledging is not required. But the pledge drive invites not just giving, but thoughtful generosity. It invites us into an annual reflection on the meaning of First Parish for ourselves, for the community. We don't, any of us, have unlimited money, right? And there are many worthy causes, there are many good purposes to which we might direct our resources. And so we're asked to reflect, where does First Parish stand in relation to these things? And maybe we also reflect, not only what does First Parish do, but what do we want it to do? And we can dream about what could it do, and what is our part in that. And I think William Ellery Channing was afraid in his period of doubt that people would not support the thing that he felt was so valuable, right? He had so much of himself and his life wrapped up in the church that it must have felt very fragile to leave it up to choice, to leave it up to the people. And sure, any voluntarily supported institution is fragile to a point. First Parish has had its shares and ups and downs in its almost 300 years of history. And there are times when things have felt scarce and precarious. And yet, First Parish has also exhibited a remarkable resilience and endurance. Time and again, people stepped up, invested as generously as they were able, gotten creative, stayed committed. And this church has not just stayed grown, it has prospered, it has thrived, and this community is a better place for it. I believe the world is a better place for it. Because you are all proof of what Channing should have known, which is that people support what they love. And this church is deeply loved by its members. And people support what matters. And this church has shown again and again how much it matters. And the resilience of a church comes from the resilience in the hearts of its people, and you are nothing if not resilient. Right? In these last few years, you kept moving forward through some tumultuous and uncertain times. And through all of this, you kept creating, you kept dreaming. It's a little funny to me that I keep running into things that you do that are so well done and so well supported that I assume that these must be traditions that go back like decades. And then I find that, no, the Christmas craft fair is in its second year. The Irish Fest is post-COVID, right? You're still dreaming up new things. Meanwhile, beloved traditions are returning, right? Like the haunted house, which came back in a huge way, the cabaret, the plant fair, which is happening, Ferry Beach. New ways of connecting are emerging, like the very successful Food for Thought multi-generational event we had, the Sunday afternoon gaming group, which is happening next Sunday, again, the Tuesday meditation group, the 1619 book project. The Friday night potluck has got new energy if you haven't been in a minute. The small groups are as robust as ever. I met with at least 7 of them in the last couple of months. They are a really strong ministry that you should be proud of. I am so impressed with how thoughtful and supportive they are and the depth of the commitment that you have to each other. Then there are our youth programs during the week. I don't know if you've been here on a weekday afternoon or Sunday evening recently, but this place is packed with kids during the week. There is a lot going on. Junior youth group, games club, 3 different youth choirs, senior youth group, coming of age. And the youth also leave the building with adult supervision to do social justice work in the community, to volunteer for worthy causes, to attend community events like the high school musical. They visit other places of worship with their Crossing Paths curriculum. And with your help, the ministry team is committed to growing and expanding all these programs, which is what you have clearly asked us to do. And of course, the church has left the building, has never stopped being true of First Parish. Even during difficult times, even during COVID, there was your remarkable sanctuary work, there's your remarkable environmental justice work, the solar panels, the pipeline protests, the campaign against private jet expansion. You rallied around our new refugee neighbors powerfully in the fall, providing so many needed resources. And this spring, we're building and strengthening our relationships with groups like UU Mass Action and UU The Vote. We're working to strengthen our relationships with neighboring UU churches, with the local interfaith community. So next year, we have even more capacity to do good work in the world in partnership. We can do both things: support a vibrant community inside our walls, do powerful work outside our walls. It's not one or the other. We will do both. And so the theme I suggested to the stewardship team for the pledge drive this year was keep the momentum going, because you have been so resilient and so resourceful through these last challenging years. And last year in particular, you made a big investment in your future. You gave with thoughtful and considered and considerable generosity, and I trust that you gave out of love and hope and not some small measure of excitement. And I hope you're feeling that excitement now, because so many good things are happening and so many good things are emerging, and you can see it all around. So let's keep that momentum. Let's keep investing in the dream that is First Parish. Let's keep creating this beautiful thing we're creating together. And it is something we create together because everyone is needed. Everyone has a place in it. Everyone's gifts matter, financial and otherwise. And everyone's love and dedication matters. Love is the spirit of this church. That is not my covenant or your covenant. That is our covenant. And let us carry it forward into our future together. Amen. Blessed be. And our closing hymn today is number 318, We Would Be One. Please rise in body or spirit. Our closing words today are by Dean Groves. Community of kindred souls, all threads in life's vast tapestry, so may we live and grow and thrive now and for all posterity. Thank you to everyone who makes First Parish what it is. You are a gift. Let us continue to grow and thrive together. Amen. Go in peace.